So causation, as Kant would later deduce, or declare based on Hume's premise, was purely an assumption projected on experience by the operations of our intellect, or understanding. Whitehead blames this misplaced concreteness on the Greeks' over-reliance on visual perception, which Gebser also points to as the dominant mode of sensory experience in the mental structure. Sense reception can be described as the temporally ordered experience of our own bodily presence, such that the immediate past and the immediate future are both constitutive elements in every passing moment, giving each a concrete and meaningful place in the whole. The immanence of the past and future provide us with a direct link, so Whitehead argues, to the real world. Quote, "It is the accepted doctrine in physical science that a living body is to be interpreted according to what is known of other sections of the physical universe." Typo. This is a sound axiom, but it is double-edged, for it carries with it the converse deduction that other sections of the universe are to be interpreted in accordance with what we know of the human body. End quote. Here, Whitehead is attempting to generalize our experience as human beings, especially our non-sensuous perception of time, to all other occasions in the universe. Concrescence is best understood as the most general analysis of the phases of becoming of every occasion in the universe, though it should be remembered that these phases are not sequential in time, but represent an integral whole. The simplest way to explain the phases of concrescence is to begin with Aristotle's four causes, or reasons. So long as we remember the passage from phase to phase is not in physical time, we will avoid oversimplification due to the false spatialization of the process. Aristotle uses the example of a house to elucidate the meaning of the causes, which was fitting for the mental structure's preference for static categories. But to emphasize the importance of process in an integral account of experience, we will begin discussing the causes involved in concrescence in relation to a sailboat at sea. The material cause for Whitehead is the creative potential underlying all actuality. Quote, "It is that ultimate notion of the highest generality at the base of actuality." End quote. In our sailboat analogy, this cause is the wind. We cannot account for the specific origin of its direction, other than to recognize that it contains within it the satisfactions of all prior concrescences. The efficient cause is the transition from attained actuality to actuality in attainment, such that the creativity of the prior phase becomes the datum for the next phase. The sails of our boat catch the winds of creativity, feeling their potential and endeavoring in the next phase to make something of it. This next phase is the formal cause, wherein future possibilities help shape past actualities. The winds of creativity caught by the sails produce a contrast between what is given and what is possible. As the saying goes, you cannot change the wind, but you can adjust your sails. The final cause is the ideal of satisfaction luring the sailboat in the direction formed by the adjustment of its sails. It is here that our analogy begins to break down, as even our sailboat, like Aristotle's house, is an artifact. Its purposes are imposed on it from without, and so it attains no satisfaction of itself in the final phase of concrescence. We will now attempt to extend this simplified analysis of concrescence to the more complex occasion produced by the human body. The first thing to remember is that the emergence of each occasion of our experience is partially conditioned by the entire past unfolding of the cosmos. The material cause, as described above, contains within it the subjective aim of countless actual entities that have come into being and perished before us. They gain objectivity immortally because as they pass over into the given primary phase for the concrescence of other actual entities, because they gain objective immortality as they pass over into the given primary phase for the concrescence of other actual entities. Period. This givenness is the efficient cause as experienced directly through non-sensuous perception of the immediate past. Rather than understanding efficient causes as merely mechanical effects lacking a motive concern, Whitehead reconnects mind and matter by interpreting them as affects, or feelings directly prehended through our most primitive kinds of perception. As Whitehead puts it, quote, sympathy is the primary ground for the continuity of nature, end quote. Having thus felt the immediate force of the past at our backs, aptly referred to as the physical pole of concrescence, we are ready to describe the transition to the mental pole. In the formation of each occasion, the swing over from reenaction to anticipation is due to the intervening touch of mentality. The occasion arises as an effect facing its past and ends as a cause facing its future. In between there lies the teleology of the universe. Whitehead calls the formal cause the subjective form of concrescence, and it represents the ingression of eternity into time as the possibilities of definiteness available for shaping the future, given the actuality of the past. Without this intervening touch of mentality, every actual occasion would be entirely determined, destined to passively reenact the past without any anticipatory ability. As was mentioned earlier in our discussion of Kant, the defining characteristic of living organisms is that they are cause and effect of themselves. The importance of this becomes evident when we consider the role played by the mental pole of concrescence. The initial phase of the mental pole is the self-formation of the organism, wherein the determined effects of its past are prehended in light of future ideals. This contrast between feelings of givenness and feelings of potential constitutes the subjective form of each occasion. The completion of each occasion is reached when the subjective comparison of effects reaches satisfaction, perishing into objective immortality and becoming the cause of subsequent occasions. This process of death and rebirth is continually taking place within what would be recognized empirically as a single organism, which explains why organisms are their own cause and their own effect. If Kant was able to analyze the organization of the living without having mistakenly assumed that sensuous perception is most primitive, he might have recognized in himself, as an instance of living matter, an analog of the teleological process of organic formation in nature. Footnote, indeed, as we already mentioned, Kant recognized this possibility late in his life, but was unable to rework his entire philosophical system to reflect it prior to his death. Varela realizes just this when he says, as was mentioned above, quote, causality, as it is perceived by us as sentient beings, may be subsumed under the more general principle of life, which for Varela and Whitehead is intrinsically teleological. We will now examine the close ties between Varela's account of autopoiesis and Whitehead's process of concrescence. Section B, the formation of living matter. I'll start that in part 8.